I want to bring in MS Now's Michael Schnell in New Albany, Ohio, where that deposition took place. Steve Eder has written about the relationship between Wexner and Epstein as an investigative reporter for the New York Times. And MS Now's senior legal reporter, Lisa Rubin, who has extensively reviewed the Epstein files and joins me here in the studio. Welcome to all of you. Michael, what do we know about how this deposition played out?
Yeah, Alex, I can tell you the deposition actually still ongoing right now. We're about to hit the 2-hour mark. As you mentioned, it's happening on Les Wexner's estate, which is about a mile away here from where I am in New Albany, Ohio. There was a question of whether or not Les Wexner would cooperate, if he would plead the fifth like Ghislaine Maxwell did, or if he would answer questions. Our team is told that he is indeed cooperating and answering questions. We'll have to learn more about what exactly they're discussing. But we did just get a hold of Les Wexner's opening statement before the committee that he delivered this morning. In it, he calls Jeffrey Epstein a con man, said he was foolish to ever trust him, and said he knew nothing about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. I want to read to you a little bit of this statement in full. He said, quote, I have done nothing wrong and have nothing to hide. I never witnessed nor had any knowledge of Epstein's criminal activity. I was never a participant nor conspirator in any of Epstein's illegal activities. To my enormous embarrassment and regret, I, like many others, was duped by a world-class con man. I cannot undo that part of my personal history, even as I regret ever having met him. Now, we're going to have to glean more of what else Les Wexner said inside the room, but it's important to note that lawmakers were really interested in talking to him, of course, because of that 2019 internal FBI document that named him a co-conspirator, but also for two other reasons. Jeffrey Epstein handled Les Wexner's finances for about 2 decades. They want to look into those financial ties. And also, one more thing about the location where we are today, New Albany, Ohio. In a 2019 affidavit, Maria Farmer, one of the first women to come out with allegations against Jeffrey Epstein, said that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell sexually assaulted her while she was at the Les Wexner estate here in Ohio. She went on to say that Wexner's security guards wouldn't let her leave the premise when she tried to flee. So needless to say, a lot going on today in New Albany, Ohio, a very core part of this Epstein investigation and story that is still unraveling day by day.
Yeah, and that last part in particular, very disturbing. Thanks, Michael, for that. But Steve, when you wrote about Wexner and Epstein in December, you said the question of what exactly Wexner got out of their relationship was one of the great unsolved mysteries of the Epstein era. So if you were in on this deposition today, what questions would you want answered?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to go back to. So, with my colleagues at the New York Times, we've been examining the relationship between Leslie Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein, for years now, going all the way back to 2019, trying to understand what was it about Jeffrey Epstein? How did he sell himself in terms of as a money manager to somebody with the wealth of Leslie Wexner? How did he build this level of trust with Wexner where he had, power of attorney to manage his finances? And so we've been really interested in trying to get back to that. I think the newest files have given us some new leads, some new details to work with. But I think there's a lot of questions that remain open for Mr. Wexner.
Is there one, though, that's burning, top of mind for you?
Yeah, so we wrote last week, we wrote a piece, where Jeffrey Epstein had written a letter. It appears that it maybe wasn't sent or wasn't received by Mr. Wexner. But the letter, it was written to a Dear Les letter, written years after these two men had had their split, their falling out, after Wexner had essentially cut off Epstein. And in it, Epstein appears as a sort of knower of secrets, as somebody who, he talks about gang stuff. He talks about keeping secrets from Mr. Wexner's wife. And it's a little bit unclear exactly what he's referring to with these things. But the letter, which representatives for Mr. Wexner have dismissed as being just on and more lies, by Epstein, it opens up questions about what was he getting at, what was he hinting at, and I think it leaves some of the questions. I would probably look to that letter as one of the places where I'd have some questions.
I know Lisa's been looking at that letter. Give me a sense of your analysis of that. And is it clear what broke off their relationship? What was the catalyst for 20 years of financial dealings, or at least Epstein running control of his finances, and all of a sudden, done?
Well, let's talk about that reason. I want to talk about that, and I want to come back to the letter. If you ask Lex Wexner, there are sort of two explanations for why their relationship went in an abrupt split. One was the rising allegations against Jeffrey Epstein. So even though here in New York and in other places of the country, Jeffrey Epstein was not a household name by any stretch of the imagination in 2007, if you operated in certain echelons of society, particularly in Palm Beach and in New York, if you read the tabloids, those allegations about Jeffrey Epstein's activities were mounting. And Les Wexner says that is why in the fall of 2007, he cut off contact. After the fact, Les Wexner also came forward to say that Jeffrey Epstein misappropriated $46 million from him. When that discovery happened, vis-a-vis the allegations against Epstein, we don't know. At the same time, there's no question in my mind that Epstein knew that he was in very hot water with Les Wexner based on the letter that Steve was referring to. I have an excerpt from it that I want to read. Okay. It says, "I have never once, not once, done anything but protect your interests. I owe a great debt to you, as frankly, you owe to me. You and I had gang stuff for over 15 years. I always told you I would never, under any circumstances, give it up or put you in harm's way." That's a level of detail that, even if this letter never got sent, to Steve's point, insinuates that the men held each other in highest confidence, and that Epstein had something on Wexner that Wexner would have found embarrassing, if not worse than that he was not allowing into the public domain. Those are the sorts of questions I think will be forefront on lawmakers' minds today, Alex.
So, Steve, you wrote that the way Epstein spoke to people like Wexner and other financial contacts fits a pattern. Describe that pattern.
Yeah, he was clear to us from some of the writings that we've seen and from our earlier reporting, too, that Epstein liked to be a knower of secrets. And, if there's not clear evidence of blackmail, per se, there is certainly the sense that Epstein would give that he had leverage, or that he, had your back and he was loyal to you, but that he also knew things about you. And it comes up, I think in a number of the different letters and the writings that we've now seen, first in our earlier reporting before the most recent documents became available, and then even more so now.
So, Lisa, yes, Maria Farmer was mentioned, but we also know that Epstein survivor Virginia Giuffre gave a deposition, about 10 years ago, in which she alleged Wexner was one of the men that she was trafficked to. But the Ohio Capitol Journal reports that one of Wexner's legal representatives, telling them, here's the quote from them, "The assistant U.S. attorney told Mr. Wexner's legal counsel in 2019 that Mr. Wexner was neither a co-conspirator nor target in any respect. Mr. Wexner cooperated fully by providing background information on Epstein and was never contacted again." So I'm curious, there seems to be kind of a disconnect. What happened there? It appears that while the U.S. attorney was saying, hey, Wexner could have been a co-conspirator, the FBI was saying what?
So it actually works the other way around. So early in July of 2019, around the time that Epstein was first indicted, the FBI is preparing to serve subpoenas on people that the FBI itself labeled as potential co-conspirators. And I want to be clear with our audience, the way that prosecutors use that term and the way that agents at the FBI might use that term can be distinguished between the two. As out of the mouths of FBI agents, it may be a more casual thing, even though legally it's a term that can have significance in terms of the crimes that people are associated with or accused of. They say in that early July 2019 email that Les Wexner is one of the potential co-conspirators. They then serve him with a subpoena. Later that month, attorneys for Wexner come into the Southern District of New York. They meet with prosecutors and they give what's called an attorney proffer. That's a meeting essentially where the attorneys say, if my client were here right now, Alex, this is what he would tell you. And it seems like that meeting took place and that prosecutors were satisfied with some of the explanations that they got. But we've never heard that directly from the Department of Justice. We are hearing that, as you just quoted, from the mouths of Les Wexner's own legal representatives. It remains to be seen what exactly the conclusions were that the prosecutors themselves reached after talking to Wexner's legal representatives for a day. I just want you to think about, in a 7-hour meeting, what kinds of topics can you reach? How much evidence can you really adduce? The fact that they let that drop after what seems like a day-long meeting has people like me scratching our heads.
Yeah. And can I just say, I'm really glad that you corrected me because I said was versus wasn't with regard to the U.S. attorney and FBI. You were very gracious about that. You could have just said, Alex, you were wrong there.
We're friends.
All right.
We're in this together, Alex.
All right. Thank you very much, all three of you, Michael Schnell, Steve Eder, and Lisa Rubin, my friend, obviously. Thanks.